over again. It's time to step into leadership. And what I mean about stepping into leadership, I want you all to listen very, very closely. It is rare that God puts a message in my heart so strong, especially when I have other plans going on. And God placed it in my heart so strong. I am calling my people into leadership, but they have been so afraid, and you must get on here and let them know. So I am literally, hang on a second here. Someone is saying I don't see, da da da. Hold on. Hopefully, someone is able to see me now because I'm live right now on YouTube. So for those who said they can't see me on YouTube, see, can you see me now? Because I just went back live on here. You all, it's time to step into the leadership role that God has for us. Here's what I want you all to recognize. If you do not step into the role in which you are called to lead, you have to understand that other people who are waiting on you, who need you, who have been searching for that gifting, that anointing, that grace, whatever it is that God has put over your life, if they can't access that, and that's what you've been here for, in essence, those people will suffer. Let me say that again. If you do not step up to the plate in your role as a leader, as God has called you to, the people you have been called to suffer, the people you have been called to service, will suffer because you've been called into that role to lead them. Does that make sense? This is why it's important that we step into that leadership role that God has called us into. And I understand that some of you may not feel that right now. You may not feel like, well, Z, I'm not quite sure if I have exactly what it takes right now in that moment. And here's what I want to bring to light to you all. Almost everyone felt that. It's completely normal to feel that you either are not ready or you don't have what it takes, or maybe that this just isn't the right time right now. That is completely normal to feel that. If you turn over to the book of Judges, chapter 6 and 7, you all know I've talked about Gideon quite a few times. Because what I love about Gideon is Gideon saw himself as the least. He saw his tribe as the least. They were going through a lot of suffering for a long time. He even said to the angel of the Lord, he says, if God has been with us, then why has all these things been happening? You understand? You see what was happening in that moment? If you turn over even to the book of Exodus, if you all go to Exodus, you can even go to chapter 4. You can go to chapter 6. You can go any of those chapters. Look how Moses responded when God called him and told him what he was called to do. Look how Moses responded. Let's look at a couple of those responses really, really quickly. In Moses chapter 6, first of all, in chapter 5 in verse 22, Moses said to the Lord, Lord, why have you brought all this trouble upon these people? Why is all this trouble here if you're calling me to lead? Then he says in verse 12, in chapter 6, verse 12, but Moses said to the Lord, he says, if they don't listen to me, why would Pharaoh listen to me since I speak with faltering lips? So you see the response that Moses had when God was calling him higher and calling him into the leadership role? He's basically saying, look, the people that know me are not even paying much attention to me. And yet you are calling me to go before Pharaoh. In other words, he was saying to God, are you kidding me? Why would they even listen? And I love that God responded. In each of these cases, God was like, because of my mighty hand, I'm going to give you the words to say. You know, if you go into chapter, here's another one here. If you go into chapter 6, verse 30, or if you go in, chapter 6, verse 30. And again, God was telling Moses what to do, but Moses said to the Lord, since I speak with faltering lips, why will Pharaoh even listen to me? You all see how the focus was on, but wait a minute. I don't understand. Let me just slow down a little bit. I feel like I'm going too fast because I got a lot to cover. Do you understand that what was happening with Moses, you all, is meant for us to look at ourselves and see when God is calling us higher into leadership roles? And it's prominent all through the Bible. I even went through Gideon just a little bit. It's very, very prominent. It doesn't look like what it's supposed to look like in that moment. That's why when the angel came before Gideon, he called him a mighty warrior. And Gideon was like, who are you talking about? What mighty warrior? Barbara says, blessing. So glad to be able to view your live. I'm so glad you're here, Barbara. That's why. But here's another piece to this I don't think you all are getting, or I hope that you all understand. When God is calling you into that role of leadership, and I personally believe he's calling all of us into the role of leadership, because I've read Genesis chapter 1 over and over and over and over and over again. And I saw my God as a creator. I saw my God speaking a thing and it was done. I saw my God standing in all authority. And then I saw in verse 26, he said, let us make mankind in our image. Now you go and do likewise, is basically what he was saying. So I believe we all have that leadership spirit. What is bothersome, and I have to be honest with you all, this is what God convicted me of yesterday. I was so convicted. If you do not step into your role as the leader God has called you to be, and you keep tinkering around with doing a little bit of this and a little bit of that and not being certain about this, and I'm gonna try to figure this out on my own and I'm not quite sure, and hesitating and pausing, you all, it's very important that you get this. You have to understand this is greater than you. It's far greater than you. The people who are waiting for you to step into that role will suffer because you have not come forth. Does that make sense? And God loves his people a bit too much to allow them to be sitting and suffering waiting on you. And I mean that with so much love. You all know I do. I mean it with a lot of love. But he loves them too much to let them sit around waiting forever for you to come forward. Does that make sense, you all? Let me see some comments on here. Someone is saying, timely, Holy Spirit speaking. He loves his people too much to wait on you forever. The beautiful thing about God is he gives us choice. He loves his people too much to wait forever for you to finally come forward and do what he's called you to do. I put up a post earlier today, and in that post, I talked about leadership, and I talked about, I actually mentioned a little bit from my book, Necessary. You all should all have a copy of it by now. But there's a chapter in here titled The Pruning Season. And I talked about in that pruning season, what's so interesting in that pruning season, you all. Man, the good gardener, I call God the good gardener in that chapter. He shows up, and I don't know why he does this, you all. I don't know. But he prunes and he just takes away stuff. He shows up and he just starts cutting away. And it just doesn't make sense, doesn't it? Brogan says, yes, he does. Leah says, Lord, help us. It just doesn't make sense that, why would you take away what I thought I needed? Like, what are you, God, if you truly have graced and called me into this role, then why would you be pruning and cutting away? That's what that chapter is all about, the pruning season. Why are you cutting away what I thought was needed? And maybe, just maybe, there's one person on this live. I see a lot of comments coming in from some of my other platforms. Maybe there's just one person on this live that needs to hear what I'm saying. Maybe this is just for one person. Because you may be in a situation where there's so much cutting and taking away, and you're letting that question your value. You're letting that question your worthiness, and you're second guessing the calling that God has called on your life. And you've been putting that business off for a while, or that product, or that book, or whatever it is that God has called you to do, because as you look around at your circumstances and at your situation, it's not matching up. And so that makes you take another step backwards, right? And like, maybe I'm not really called to do what I thought I was called to do, right? Does that make sense? But you guys can't miss this. This is really important, you all. Someone says, thank you for your obedience. I'm so broken. Is there more left to prune? He will continue to prune what he needs to prune to get rid of what no longer is needed, so that you can be replanted and put in that good soil and be able to grow and sprout up. Because if you sprout up to the level that he's trying to take you and your roots are not deep, what do you think's going to happen when the strong winds and things come against you? So maybe this is meant just for one person to hear. Because I'm not even supposed to be doing this live right now. I have a completely packed schedule for today. And since early this morning and all the way here, God has just put it in my heart. I'm calling my people into leadership, and they are afraid. You need to tell them not to be afraid, that I am with them. But you all also need to know, if you don't step into that role, and if you don't answer to the call, that's even a better way of putting it. You have to understand, the people who are waiting on you will suffer. I got so convicted by that yesterday. I had I won't go into detail about things. I'll just say this. I'll just keep it very general. I'm repenting myself and leading by example a lot more. There's some situations where one or two recently that happened where some people approached me and they said, Z, they went off into some programs and they just put thousands of dollars into some program. I won't go into detail about it, but I'll just say this. They didn't even know that even inside of the Unlocking Greatness community that I have an inner circle. And they didn't know that in our inner circle level, we go deeper into implementation with business and all of that kind of stuff. I won't go into detail about it, but with product launches and book launches and you name it, getting your social media up and your coaching program up and all of that. And I felt the guilt after she explained to me what she had went off and did with this other place because I didn't step into the role that I know God called me to do and even let it be known to her, let alone everyone else. Hey, here's that other level that we have that I have people in. I didn't do it. And you don't want to know why? And I'm repenting as I'm talking to you all. You want to know why? Because in my mindset, I was thinking it's being humble and it's being loving by not to do that and let me just show up and just love people and just give them what I got and leave it at that. And if they want more, they'll let me know. They'll come to me. And so as a result of that, and this hurts my heart to hear, and I won't go into too much detail because those members know who they are, 2 or so people went off into other groups and honestly, without going into detail, some companies just really took advantage of them in some ways. I'll leave it at that. That's about as best I can get it. I'm talking thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. And I sat there and I thought, this is a prime example of how people suffer when you don't step into the role that God has called you to do. Hold on. And when you sell yourself short and you shrink and you actually think it's being humble. You really do. Some of you right now have things that God has called you to do. And it doesn't always have to be business. It could just be purely spiritual. It could be something with just helping other people. It can be a business or a book or whatever it is that God has called you to do, right? And what you don't realize is that when you are delaying and sitting there holding on to what you know God has called you to do, you don't realize you're causing other people to suffer because they need you. They need that version of how God gave it to you to come forth. And so when God is doing that pruning season in our lives, when he's allowing things to be cut or taken away, we sit there and second guess it instead of moving forward. That's why I just read quite a bit from the book of Exodus for those who are just joining. Moses was called higher, but Moses kept reminding God, wait a minute, but I have faltering lips. I don't speak that well. And if the people don't listen to me, they definitely won't listen to Pharaoh definitely won't listen to me. That's why Gideon was like, who are you calling a mighty warrior? I'm not a mighty warrior. I'm the least, right? And if you all really get into this, if you really, really get yourself into the Bible, you'll realize this story is consistent all through the Bible. All through the Bible. The story, even with King David, right? King David wasn't even considered when Samuel went to his father Jesse's house and was trying to anoint someone. They had his butt out there in the field, taking care of the sheep and all of that. All throughout the Bible is actually very consistent that those who have a calling on their life, who God has called into leadership, oftentimes start off in a very humbling position, or let me say this, are humbled deeply before God just shoots them up and rises them. It's I hate to say it like this. It's necessary. Sometimes, I believe many times, I'm tempted to say all times, the humbling season, it's actually necessary. Because it's not until God humbles us. Let me just speak for myself. How about that? Let me speak for me. It wasn't until God humbled me that I then was able to clearly hear his voice and walk and do as he called me to do. And get this, it wasn't until he humbled me and allowed so many things to happen in the ground to be shaken and things to be taken away in the pruning season and all that. It wasn't until those moments that I realized, man, I thought I was a smart person. I got a master's degree. I've been working since I was 13 years old. I've always been able to figure things out and make it happen. It wasn't until none of those things worked anymore for me. I don't know if there's anyone that can identify with what I'm saying. It wasn't until God had to strip all of it away just to show me, baby, all along, I was the one carrying you and making these things happen. You thought it was you, but all along it was me. That's why I'm in love with the book of Gideon. I'm really in love with it. And the reason I'm so in love with it is because he was in such a humbling position. And yet God saw him as a mighty warrior. And I love, he had what, about 33,000 soldiers. And that wasn't enough. That was not enough at all. That was like minuscule compared to the army he was coming up against. I love that even in that 32 or 33 or so thousand soldiers he had, I love that God took it all away and humbled him down to only 300 soldiers. You guys can go and read that story if you want in Judges 6 and 7. It's one of my favorite stories in the Bible because I used to have a problem with that. I know I'm going left field a minute, you guys, but I just got to go in the flow. That's why I'm closing my eyes. I used to have such a problem with that passage because I thought, why if he didn't have much? God explained to me, why are you lowering it down even more? Why are you constantly doing this pruning? You're calling him into leadership, but that looks like the opposite of leadership to me. Why? When someone is so low, why are you taking it lower? Why are you doing that? And what's beautiful, if you're going to listen to the whole story, to read it all, what's so beautiful about all of it is all along God had a plan and he still rose. God did an amazing thing with those 300 people, gave him a strategy that was out of this world, and they still went on to win. But God said in that, if you guys go back and read it, I'm paraphrasing. He said in that, I had to do it. I had to do it. I had to go that route. And again, I'm paraphrasing, so that when I got him to where I was taking him, he wouldn't think it was by his own strength that he got there. Does that make sense, you all? Does that make sense to anyone? So now I'm going to go back to the topic on leadership, which is what I'm talking about. This is a season where God is calling so many of you, including myself, to higher levels of leadership. Do not allow yourself to get confused by thinking, wait, but this doesn't look like it. That's how God works. That's how he works. There's a couple other things I want to talk to you all about really quickly, and I wrote a few notes down that I wanted not to forget. Don't confuse humility with fear. Some of you, and I know this because I talk to a whole lot of you, that have had ideas and goals and dreams that God has given you all, and you've kept putting it off like forever. So many of you I've talked to. Even in the last week, I've met with a number of you all, the ones who are considering joining the Unlocking Greatness community. I've had some conversations. And so many times we confuse humility with fear. We think that, well, I just need to keep waiting and I'm just waiting to hear from God before I do this, and I'm just waiting. When God's already made it clear to you what you need to do. But then when I have a talk with people, and it normally don't take me longer than 5 minutes. When I have that conversation, then I realize, and they realize it, it's fear. It's fear what's holding them back from, for example, putting that book out there, or for example, starting that podcast or starting that coaching program, or whatever it is that God has called you to do, that nonprofit, whatever it is. Majority of the time, it's been fear. And here's another one that it's been a lack of worthiness. I spoke to some amazing professional women last week, and they have all these grand plans, and some of them may be on this live right now. They had all of these grand plans about all of the things they want to do in these businesses they're trying to start and this and that. And it only took me maybe 2-3 minutes. And I talked to them and I said, so do you feel worthy of this? Do you believe in you and that God has chosen you to actually do this? And you should have seen their heads just kind of go down. And they were like, Z, that's really what's been holding me back, is I just don't feel worthy. I feel that, and then they just went on to share some things. That's been a common thread throughout almost every single person that I've been talking to, is a sense of I just don't feel worthy. I just don't feel that I can, I believe I can actually do it, but I just don't feel like I should be doing it because look at my situation. That is a lie from the enemy, you all. It's one of the main techniques that the enemy uses to try to keep you from moving forward and doing what God has called you to do. I'm reading some of the comments coming in here. Thank you. Christine is going through some things with her marriage, her finances. Christine, I wish I had time to respond to you. There's a chapter in my book titled Through the Fire. Make sure you read that chapter about Through the Fire. When we have our book club meeting next week on the 11th, many of you know we meet every month on the 11th for a national book club meeting. Make sure you've read that chapter, Through the Fire, Christine, because in that chapter, as God was calling me into leadership, every single area in my life was breaking down as well. Marriage, finances. Around that time, my son he didn't pass away yet, but he was right at the verge of it. Like everything was happening all at one time. And there's a chapter in there called Through the Fire. I don't have time to read it with you, but I pray that it greatly encourages you, because I was doing a season where I thought if one more thing happens, like I just can't take anymore. So I pray it encourages you. Let me pause for a moment because I've been talking a little bit nonstop. Someone says getting the book. Thank you, Barry, and thank you. The audio book. Now, I wasn't even on here to talk about a book, to be honest with you all. I was doing this live because God put it in my heart. I'm calling people into leadership. I'm calling you all into leadership. And you cannot be moving forward being so afraid. So that's what this live is all about. But Miriam, you can get my book at my site at unlockinggreatness.com. The audio book and the video book is there. But the actual paperback, you can pretty much get it anywhere around the world. A couple other things. I wrote down a few points. God, give me wisdom to make sure I talk about all of this. Give me wisdom. Sometimes perfectionism can be disguised as fear. Fear can be disguised as perfectionism as well. I've talked to a number of you all that's been putting off things. You've been working on a website forever. You've been working on an outline of your book like forever, or you've been talking about all of these projects like forever. And maybe you put your toe in the water a little bit, but you didn't kind of move forth with it, right? Some of you all know what I'm talking about. The underlining current with that is fear. Putting things off, adding more and more things, that needs to get done before you actually get out there and start doing the thing. And that's why we've got to realize, and this is why I'm going to say this, I've said it 2 times, and I want to say it again. The people that you are called to lead, if you don't step up and do what God has called you to do, you have to understand the people who have been waiting on you, they will be the ones who end up suffering. I just gave an example about 2 or 3 women from my own program who didn't even know that I offered a higher tier of services. It's an inner circle that I have, really more so for people that are launching their products and services on a global basis. And we go a lot deeper into implementation and product development. I barely even mention it to my members, right? Thinking that's being humble. And in the meantime, what happened, and it hurts my heart, 2 or 3 of them went on to some other program paying, you don't even want to know how much money. I won't even get into that, right? And not getting a fraction of what they thought they were getting, and then coming back and saying, but Z, I didn't even know that you offered that. You see my point? I know that's a weak example, but do you see my point? That book that you have, Sharifa, thank you. That book that you have that's inside of you that God has told you to write, what you don't see, you may just see, okay, let me put it off, or I'm going to try to write another chapter. What you don't see is the hundreds and thousands of people who right now need to hear that story so they can have the hope to go another day. Is anyone picking up what I just said? If you all see the amount of emails, the amount of DMs and things that we get in from people who've read Necessary, and let me just be very clear about this, because this is not about promoting the book. I'm using this as an example. I went through so much when God woke me up at 3 a.m. years ago and told me that I was going to write this book and showed me this cover, which is why my name is not even on it, by the way, because that's how he showed it to me in the spirit. If you all knew the magnitude of the amount of people from all around the world. I was at the airport a couple of weeks back trying to go to the bathroom, and a lady stopped me in line at the bathroom saying, "You have no idea how between your podcast and your book, how it's changed my life." Then I'm walking down the hallway at the airport, and another lady runs up to me, and she said, "You don't even understand." One lady even sent me a message, and she said, "Zia, it was a tornado." And she said, "I ran into my closet with my child." I think she said her pet, and she said, "I had my Bible and I had your book necessary." She says, "That's what I literally took in when I thought the roof of my house was going to be torn off." And other people, I have a note that's on my door in there. I'm getting emotional about it because it touches my heart. I keep this note on my door. Her initials is ML or M something, and she wrote me a letter. She don't know that I keep it on my door. And she just said, "During the most difficult seasons of my life, when I thought I was just going to give up, just done, you don't understand how that book moved me." And I thought about what would have happened had I not allowed God to do what he needed to do, and I get over that threshold and write the book and put out there what God has called me to do. We get so many messages from people. Does that make sense, you all? And the same is with you. You all turn over to Ephesians chapter 4 really quickly. Maybe this will help you. In Ephesians chapter 4, and I don't say nothing about my Bible and my pages being kind of torn out, because I'm not going to send my Bible in to get it professionally, whatever. This Bible's been with me almost 30 years, day in and day out, or 32 years, I think. And no one is going to be repairing stuff. All the pages are here. But anyway, Ephesians chapter 4, I've just read them so many times, I'm missing. Ephesians chapter 4, verse 11. You all read that really quickly. Ephesians 4, verse 11 says, "It was he who gave some to be apostles, some to be prophets, some to be evangelists, some to be pastors, some to be teachers." And it just goes on and on. We all have a unique divine, what is the word I'm looking for? There's an anointing. If you look up Ephesians 1:5, slow down, Z. Let me just slow down. Let me slow down. If you look up Ephesians 1:5 or you look up Jeremiah 1:5, you're going to quickly find that none of this is being made up as you go along. Let's start there. Predestined. God knew you before he even formed you, right? All of us have a role. That's why I like this passage in Ephesians. Some of us are prophets. Some of us are evangelists. Some of us are teachers. Some of us are whatever, right? I feel that God has called me to be an encourager to the nation, right? It's very easy for me to go live and do this. I don't have to have notes. It's very rare that I have a few bullet points listed down, which I have right now. Very, very rare, because it comes so second nature. And so your role is to figure, okay, God, what is it that you uniquely put me here to do? And God, forgive me for not stepping up to the plate in the role you've called me to do. Help me, Father. Put me in the right environment. And that's another thing I want to talk about. I talked to a couple people, because I've been having meetings with people, and I'm going to try my best to have another one today. I've been having meetings with people who've been considering joining the Unlocking Greatness community, because we have live workshops every week, and it's phenomenal. And I talk to people, and recently I've heard one or two people say that they pretty much get all of their help and all their advice from ChatGPT. Let me just talk on that for just a moment. I like ChatGPT just like everybody else. And ChatGPT is good to be used as a tool. But please don't you ever in your life replace that for personal connection. Don't replace that for perception. Don't replace that for connections and learning from other people's experiences. In fact, the majority of the people who even come into the Unlocking Greatness community, they have so much doggone information going on, so much content that they've consumed. The problem is they're confused because they feel like they're going in 50 directions and they need the help. Does that make sense? So don't be relying on something. Use the technology as a tool, but don't replace God with that. I just want to throw that in really quickly. Let me read a couple of comments, and I'm going to share a quick little story with you guys, and I'm actually going to close this out. Well used, well loved. Thank you, thank you. Someone says, did you come up against warfare with people that you thought would encourage you or point you in the right direction to start your book, but they just brush you off like you didn't? Yeah, that's normal. That's actually very good. One of the first things that you learn, we have a retreat called the Necessary Retreat. The very first lesson you learn in there, which is all about perception, that answer, that question you just had, literally is what we address. Everything is spiritual, Barb. Read Ephesians 6:10 so that you won't be dismayed by that. In fact, Barb, instead of being dismayed by that, you have to expect it. That's totally normal. Ephesians 6:10. Everything is spiritual. The real battle is against the rulers and authorities and the principalities in the dark realms. That's normal. So when you're called to do something, as you're talking about right in the book, and you try to put it out there, and then people basically brush you off, as you just said, not only is that normal, not only is that expected, that should be celebrated. And I know I just threw you with that. I'm trying my best not to turn this into a live mentorship session. I know I threw you with that, but that should be celebrated. Why do you think I went back and rewrote chapter 1 from Necessary, which is titled A Letter to the Enemy, Part 1? Why do you think I thanked him for leaving me on my knees in the presence of my Father? Because he saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. And that chapter goes on to talk about it, and he almost succeeded. He almost succeeded. But thank God he left me on my knees. Thank God all those people left me. Thank God I went through all of the mess I went through, because it was only in that moment that I realized, and this is what I say in that chapter, it was only in that moment that I realized all that time my Father was trying to speak to me and give me some divine direction that nobody else could have given me in the moment. Does that make sense? And so it was only when I was on my knees that I began to look up and realize, wait a minute, the enemy is limited. Oh my God, I wish I had some time with you right now. The enemy is limited. He don't get to show up and do whatever he wants to do in your life. And so when you focus on perception, and for perception is the very first part that we talk about inside of the Necessary Retreat. Perception is number one. When you get that perception right. In fact, Barb, you guys got to bear with me a second, because I don't want to leave Barb alone. Barb, if you don't read anything else, go and read 2 Kings is it chapter 4, you all? Chapter 6. You can read chapter 4 as well. That's the one about the widow. But anyway, read 2 Kings chapter 6. I'm not going to read it to you. You have to read it on your own. And I want you to look at what happened. Let me make sure I'm giving you the right chapter. Yes, it's the right chapter. Go to 2 Kings chapter 6, and you read about what happened when that whole army came up against Elijah. And how his servant was just like, what's going to happen? What are we going to do? What are we going to do? And look at what Elijah prayed. He prayed that God opened his eyes so that he could see what was around him. So perception is so incredibly important. And when you get just that first part on straight, which you learned that in the first 3 weeks, by the way, Barb, when you get the perception on straight, when all those things begin to happen, Barb, and you begin to write that book, Barb, and that perception is adjusted, and that's just one part of what you learn in the retreat, but that perception is adjusted, Barb, not only are you going to expect it, you're going to be thanking them. It's going to turn into not a disappointment, Barb, but it's going to turn into a confirmation. Does that make sense? Because now you realize what happens not only in the physical realm, but in the spirit realm. We talked about that Monday in one of my recent sessions that I had with the members in the Unlocking Greatness community. They were learning about there's absolutely nothing, and Barb, please remember this, there is nothing that happens in the physical that didn't happen in the spirit first. Did you hear me, Barb? If you can just remember what I just told you, just that little point, there is nothing that happens in the spirit, in the physical, that did not happen in the spirit first. That's why I stress tremendously, especially the first 3 weeks that you decide to get in the Unlocking Greatness community and go through the retreat, because all of the members walk through what's called a retreat, a necessary retreat. That's why in the first couple of weeks, you're learning how do you first go ahead in the spirit, right? Like I'm doing this meeting, but it was given to me in the spirit. You all don't know that, right? I wasn't planning on doing it, but God gave it to me in the spirit, right? How do I make sure that I am always operating in the spirit first? Because by the time it happens in the physical, Barb, is already too late. I'm going to leave you with that because I got to get to these other people that are watching, and I've got a quick couple little points I want to make, and I'm going to close this live out. But Barb, it's very important that you get that basic, that's like very basic training. Get that basic training so that you don't end up stopping yourself. There's a chapter in Necessary. I don't have time to read it, Barb, but it's chapter 21, and it's titled, If I Were Your Enemy. You really should read that chapter. Chapter 21, If I Were Your Enemy. Because If I Were Your Enemy, What's amazing about that chapter, and God gave it to me in the spirit, what's amazing about If I Were Your Enemy, that chapter talks all about, man, if I were your enemy, here's what I would do to try to get you to stop yourself. I would definitely try to keep you discouraged. And I go on to talk about how I would try to make you feel like the hero for everybody. So every time you sit your butt down and you really getting ready to focus and do what God is calling you to do, I would make sure you get a phone call from somebody about some mess. You get my point? I would make sure you feel like you got to be the rescuer and the hero, and you feeling good about yourself. And I'm speaking from experience, which is why God wrote that through me. You feel good about yourself and you think you're running around being like Jesus, helping the whole wide world. Does that make sense, Barb? And I'm speaking to you with love, Barb, just so you know, because I'm speaking from my own conviction, okay? You feel like you should be Jesus running around saving and helping the whole wide world, and not even realizing your role never was to try to get out there and rescue and save and help every single person, right? And you don't have those healthy boundaries in place, and the enemy just loves that, because then you get worn completely out. And then guess what? You don't even have the creativity anymore you had a few days ago to write another chapter. You see my point? I have a podcast episode on that as well. Barb, if you go to my YouTube, look up Unlocking Greatness Podcast with Zenja Glass. That episode, you all help me out. What is that episode called? I think I called it You Are the Target. It may be 2 years old. Just go to my YouTube and I have a ton of podcast episodes. But I think it's called something like You Are the Target or something like that, right? And I talk about how I was running around trying to take care of everybody else, thinking I'm being like Jesus and doing what's right, right? And I didn't realize all that time the enemy was using all of those circumstances to keep me from being focused on doing what I needed to do. And I end up getting myself completely burned out. So back to what I was saying, I'm back to you all now. And Barbara, hopefully that's helpful. What was my topic with this? This is on leadership. Let me just say these few things before I close this out. You all, when God is calling you into a role of leadership, the ground tends to shake and things tend to get destabilized for a moment, or sometimes for a long season, and that's okay. I can't even express to you all how important it is that you understand when you don't step into that role, the people who are called, who are waiting on you, not only do they suffer, your family suffers as a result. It literally impacts generations, because you're still playing so incredibly small and you're not moving when God has called you to move. I'm going to use a really, really weak example. Now, anyone that knows me, you guys know I don't watch TV. I don't even listen to the radio. For years, I love to just, sit, pray, read my Bible, or listen to some gospel music or something, or read some books on business. That's a whole nother subject. But somehow I heard a couple weeks ago, I don't know where I heard it from, but it was an old clip from Michael Jackson. And in that clip, he said, it was just like a 10-second clip I heard him say. And he said something like, and I pray I'm quoting it right. He said something like, whenever a beat or music or a sound comes to him, he said something like he knew that he had to produce it quickly. Otherwise, he said God would give it to Prince. And I'm sure some of you all know who Prince was as well. And I thought, oh, he just went over the heads of so many people in that little clip. Most people, I don't even know how I heard that clip. Maybe somebody sent it to me, but I thought, I'm willing to, I just said most people that probably went completely over their heads with what I just heard. Now, let me say this, I would assume that was him said, and nowadays you don't know if it was somebody putting words in his mouth. But anyway, that's what I heard. And I thought that makes a lot of sense, because yes, God will wait on us and allow us to, as he did with Moses and Gideon, to come forth and do the things he's called us to do. But if we continue to not move in that direction because we are afraid, oh, he don't just keep waiting forever. It passes on to someone else. You may say, well, Z, where are you getting that from? Well, I'm glad you asked that question. Turn over to Matthew really quickly, chapter, you already know where I'm turning to. Is it 25? Let me see, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. I want you to turn over to Matthew, and I want you to read the chapter on I think it's 25. You guys bear with me. Yes. Turn over to Matthew 25. Some of you all may have your Bibles out, and turn over to the parable of the talents. What I really love about the parable of the talents is, and this is a parable that Jesus told, someone was given 5 talents, some was given, I think, 2, and some was given 1. The shortest version I can give you on this, because I'm going way longer than I wanted to, the shortest version I can give you on all that is the person that was given 5 went out and doubled it. Person that was given 2 talents went out and doubled it. The person that was given 1 talent, do you all know what happened? Someone tell me what happened with the person that was given 1 talent. He had 1 talent that was given to him. Someone tell me what happened with that one person. What did he do with the talent that was given to him? Let me see here on my YouTube. Hopefully I can see on YouTube. Someone in the YouTube put something in there so I can make sure this is working. Okay, Lachelle says they hid it. Broken Nick says they buried it. And what else happened with that story? Anyone know how Jesus responded with that? Come on, Caribbean said it was taken away and given to the other. So now you see why I just brought up that story. Sort of a weak example, but I just brought up that story about Michael Jackson, right? That's why I said I think that went over a lot of people's head. God loves his people too much to allow them to continue suffering as they're waiting for you to come forth into your role as a leader. This is why we're called to do it. Now, let me give you some encouragement with this. I don't want to leave you on a low. I'll give you some encouragement. Let me just think of one of the things I wanted to tell you all. Let me start with a little story really quickly. The reason why all of this is so important as we step into leadership and we understand it doesn't look like it, you all in the beginning, when we're getting out there and trying our best to not only become, but to show up and walk and talk and think and act like that person. The reason why it's just so important that we get a grasp on that and we understand why the ground starts to shake and the good gardener shows up and prune is because when we try to step out there and do things out of order, we always find ourselves back at the beginning point. That's why, even in the Unlocking Greatness community, and many of you all may not know this because we have a whole 12-week program. It's titled The Necessary Retreat, and it's available to the community members. We focus heavily on 3 stages, spiritual growth, personal growth, as well as entrepreneurship with business owners. In fact, over half of our members are business owners. Let me say that again, spiritual, personal, and entrepreneur. But let me tell you the story behind it, because this is the part you guys don't know. For those of you who focus primarily just on spiritual, now we're talking about leadership. For those of you who focus just primarily on spiritual, you're reading your Bible all day, you're praying all day, and anytime somebody asks you how you're doing, you're one of the first to say, I'm blessed and highly favored and all that good stuff, right? Right? So when that spiritual part is on real tight, you can quote just about any passage in here better than anybody that I know. Am I right? So that used to be me, where that was my only and primary focus, that and nothing else. But guess what? I lacked personal growth and development. I wasn't ready for leadership at that point because I didn't have healthy routines in place. I didn't know anything about mindset. I didn't know anything about patterns. What kind of pattern am I following right now? I didn't know what kind of biblical principle am I in. I didn't know anything about what stage in life I'm in at this point. I didn't know anything about the importance of repetition. I'd never even heard of the word paradigm, nor knew what that even meant. You guys get my point? So I was doing all of this reading and praying and reading and praying, and there's nothing wrong with that. I think that is extremely important. In fact, that's the foundation for what I teach from. Is from the Holy Bible. I think it's extremely important. But oh, my dear brothers and sisters, if you do not have the personal development as well, you will find yourself knowing everything that there's to know about the Bible, but having no results to show for it in your life. Because you don't have any healthy routines in place. You have no accountability in place. You don't understand why you start and stop and start and stop and start and stop, right? And everything that you do is like, well, God told me, and God told me, and God told me, but yet you never get it done. And that's why I know I'm drifting a little bit, but I want to tie this all together. That's why I love being in the Word of God. Because when Moses was in the book of Exodus, you all know what chapter that was in Exodus? Moses thought he was doing everything right. Where is that at in Exodus? And anyone know what his father-in-law came along and told him? Because Moses was sitting there trying to serve God, and you would on the outside it looked like he's doing everything right. Does anyone know in chapter 18 what Moses' father-in-law said to him? Does anyone know? Does anyone know what Moses' father-in-law came and said to him when his father-in-law came and visited him? Does anyone know? Come on, you guys. Because some of you all are in that situation right now. You are serving, you're working hard, you're praying night and day, you're helping people, you're doing the very, very best that you can, but you don't have the other pieces to the puzzle. And that's what was going on with Moses in one situation. Does anyone know what his father said him? Come on, Caribbean, she got it. Jethro told him to appoint me to help him. Jethro had to come to Moses and help him to see, Moses, what you're doing is actually not good. He said, Moses, what you're doing is not good. He says, these people are going to wear you out, and you're going to wear yourself out with this, basically, I'm paraphrasing, with this setup, with the way that you're doing it. You got all the bells and whistles, but this is not wise, Moses. And Moses took the advice from his father-in-law and then began to prosper. Now, let me pivot for just a moment on this. I got to say this. This is for all of you who depend solely on like a chat GPT, right? I don't need a mentorship or a community or any help or anything from anybody. I got chat GPT. That's my answer to everybody, right? So you end up with all of these ideas, all of this content, all of this stuff you're learning, right? And Jethro comes along and said, Moses, what you're doing is not good. You need some help. So let me go back to me now. In that example I gave, I had everything on, at least that I knew spiritually, but I had zero, almost zero in terms of the personal development. No accountability, no other perspectives other than mine and what I feel I prayed and received, right? No awareness of patterns I was following, no type of routines in place, nothing that really helped me to grow and implement and stick to the things that I said I was going to do. So now that's that set of people that focuses heavily on just spiritual. Now I'm going to put that person aside. Then there's a second group of people. There are these type of leaders I've seen. Everything is about just personal development. Everything is about, mindset. Everything is about being in the right vibrations, as they call it. Everything is around routines, and they have schedules in place, and they have strict accountabilities, not only from others, but from themselves. And I mean, they have personal development just locked down so incredibly well, right? But then they are lacking tremendously with the spiritual growth. And the issue with that kind of leader, and I've been in that role a time or two, the issue with that kind of leader is you can get a lot of things done, but then you lack that fulfillment, that enjoyment of life. You lack that peace that you really need. You lack the discernment. That's a good one. You lack the wisdom that only can come from being bonded and abiding in God. Does that make sense, you all? You lack the experience. You lack the discoverability of, wow, where do I find myself in these biblical principles? Does that make sense, you all? So you got all of these accountabilities things on straight, and I know a lot of people like that. I've met you all. I've met a number of people, but you don't have that spiritual base. So when life shows up and things begin to happen unexpectedly that you can't control, are you all following me for a moment? I'm going to close this out. That you can't control, right? Then you find yourself things faltering because you don't have that spiritual base. Now I'm going to talk about the third person, the third type of leader that I've noticed. Third type is strong spiritually, fairly decent with personal development, but almost no entrepreneurship or business skills whatsoever. And so you have all of these goals and dreams that God has given you. Are you all following me so far? You have all of these big ideas in mind. And you've been forever, at least, who knows how long, for some of y'all it's been years, thinking about and planning and doing all of these false starts, right? Getting a program together like a false start. And this is where I was at, all of these false starts, right? Because you don't have the environment, the help, the knowledge that you need to actually get that product or service off the ground. So maybe you're trying to manufacture or produce a product. I don't know if you all know I manufacture and private label my own products as well and have them manufactured and produced. But maybe you're trying to do that. Maybe you're trying to write a book. Maybe you're trying to get your own podcast together or your coaching program or your nonprofit or whatever it is, but you're not even in an environment in the least bit where you can get the help that you need, get the training. You see what I'm saying? So you got the best heart in the world spiritually. You got the personal piece on, right? But you still are locked into, I pretty much can do this all myself. I don't need any outside help. And I'll just say this to you all. Let me just be very clear, because I've been there as well. When you find yourself in that mode and it's all just you have to understand that you're going completely from your perspective. And sometimes, even when you're sitting and praying and God is giving you an answer, then the next day it's a different answer, and the next day it's a different answer. You find yourself in these loops because you're not even in an environment that's conducive to learning and growing. Now, let me be clear. I found myself in all three of those positions. And that's why in the Unlocking Greatness community, we have all three. The entire model is taught from all three: spiritual development, personal development, as well as entrepreneurship. I cannot and I will not separate it. And I already know there's been a number of you who've reached out, who just wish that I would just, Z, if you just don't talk about, biblical principles, I'm good because I'm not really into that. And I've had people say, Z, you can make so much more if you just take this part out, right? And just focus on just the business, because everybody out here is just trying to make money, right? You have to have all three. That's my personal opinion. One, you need to have the wisdom and discernment. Two, you need to have some kind of regulation, right? For personal development. And three, you need to have some sort of a business knowledge and business base to be able to carry out whatever this calling is if God has called you to build, to be a builder. That's why all three are inside of the Unlocking Greatness community. So I wanted to say that. So that's my story with that, is that I found myself in all three. And when God finally moved in me to be able to take the steps that I'm taking now, I thought to myself, there's no way that I can take that out. So my challenge for you all is this. It's time to step into leadership. Take some time today to evaluate, where are you at this point in life? Look over your last year. I've had to do that. I made some mistakes, you all. Look over your last year and ask yourself, God, where do I need some help at in my life? Where is it spiritual? Some of you all need to find a good local church to get into, a good organization or something, so you can grow in your knowledge of the Word of God. Is it personal development? Do I need to learn more about my patterns, my mindset? Where am I at right now? What stage in life am I at? How do I get healthy accountability in my life? Or is it entrepreneurship? How do I get myself into the right environment so that these ideas don't just remain ideas and I don't continue carrying the same, walking through the same loops, starting something and it not going well, going up and down and up and down. How about I get myself into an environment where people have been there and done that, and I can grow and get the help that I need? Step into your role as a leadership. Step into what God has called you to do. People are waiting on you. People are waiting on you to step into your role, and stop thinking, for those of you, and I'm speaking to those of you who love God with all your heart, mind, body, and soul. Stop thinking that it is wrong to even have a mindset or thought pattern of starting or growing a business or charging for your services. That's probably been half of the sessions I've had to spend time with people on, because I used to be stuck in that. I used to think that it was humble to just give everything away for free, to never talk about money, to never talk about anything, just to be all about, I'll serve until I have nothing left. No, that's not humility. That's being broke. Does that make sense? You can still give and serve. 99% of everything I do is free, just so you all know. And when I say 99%, my podcast, my social media posts, so much I put out there. Even my audiobook is a pay what you want, right? Right? But never allow the enemy to get in there and to turn things in such a way to make you feel guilty for charging for your products or your services, because you need to have those resources coming in so you can continue to serve even at a higher level. Does that make sense? Let me read some of these comments in here. I'm going to let you all know. Someone says, ma'am, that's why you're like you're my mother. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Someone says, I know always. What was the comment here? You can put the comment back in there again. I missed it. I saw there were some other comments coming in here. So let me close this out. I want you all to take some time to evaluate yourselves. Take some time to look over every single thing spiritually, in your personal development, as well as in entrepreneurship. Whatever business or goal God has given you, look over all of that and ask God, am I stewarding well what you've given me? Let me see a yes from you all if you're willing to do that. Take a look and say, am I stewarding well what you've given me? And always remember the passage, as iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another. Y'all, we can't do it alone. I didn't grow up in an environment where there was any type of, I don't know, mentoring, coaching, and all of that stuff. Nobody had money for that kind of stuff. I just did not grow up in that environment. If you all read Necessary, you already know my story, right? And unfortunately, and many people don't know this, I've been in business almost 30 years now, a number of companies that I own. I've made so many mistakes, you all, through the years, and I had to learn the hard way how important it is, as iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another. Because one day I would feel so strongly about something, and then the next week is something else I feel so strongly about. And then the next week I saw a post somebody put up, or something on YouTube, or something here, and now my mind is thinking a different right. So I didn't even realize the importance of getting that type of help that I needed in leadership, and I made so many mistakes as a result of that. So you want to sit down and evaluate and look at the whole picture. And as God is calling you into leadership, your primary role needs to be, God, how have you called me to lead? And in what areas do I need to change and grow? I was telling God the other day, I said, I surrender. Whatever it is that you want me to do, I'm going to do. Rip away and take away anything that disturbs that keeps me from following in your perfect alignment. Show me the areas where I need to grow. That's the essence of a true leader, you all. And when you step out there into that alignment and you're doing what God has called you to do, you don't have to beg for anybody to join your program or buy a book or support you, as Barb was saying, for the book she's writing and this, that. You don't have to do any of that, because it's the flow is just going to come naturally, because God has already assigned the people to you that are for you. Does that make sense, you all? He's already assigned the people to you that are for you. Our role is, God, get me in perfect alignment with your good and pleasing will for my life, and I step into this leadership role as you've called me to do. I'm going to close out by saying this. I remember in Necessary, and this was right after the worst season of my life, when God had me write the chapter. I think it was the end of chapter 23. And that was after, unfortunately, we lost our son unexpectedly, which is a whole nother subject. But I remember in chapter 23, I just remember saying, I have nothing else to give. Like, I'm done, God. There's nothing. How can you be calling me into leadership and to share my life with people and helping other people when I'm just at my lowest I've ever been? And that's when God revealed to me, and I wrote that at the end of chapter 23, when God revealed to me, now my strength can be made perfect in your weakness. Now, this is a what is the word I'm looking for? I want to say spirit, or I want to say body, a vessel. That's the word. This is a vessel now that I can use. Because now you're surrendered to my will for you. And now you know you're going to go in my strength and not your own. So I just want to encourage you, for those of you who feel like Bazee, I do want to step into this leadership role. I do want to do what God has called me to do, but I'm just so weak. I just want you to know, and I know this sounds weird to say, you're in the perfect position. You're in the perfect position. Because now your intuition and your intelligence is not going to be what does it. When I first started my podcast, when God told me to get on the radio, start talking, right? First of all, I don't even follow podcasts. I don't even like podcasts. I don't even follow social media. That's why my channels, I don't follow anybody, right? It didn't make any sense to me at all, but it was given in the spirit. And I just began from one of the weakest moments in my life to just walk in obedience and do what God told me to do. Did I mess up a lot? You bet I did. I still mess up, you guys. And I didn't know on the back end, found out a long time later after that well over 1 million people worldwide were tuning in and listening and watching. Little by little. We weren't running ads for that, by the way. Little by little, they began to tune in and watch worldwide. How is that possible? Walk in that alignment. Sit in the spirit and allow God to direct you and show you. And if there's an area in your life where you fall short, whether it's spiritual growth, personal development, or entrepreneurship, say to yourself, let me do what I need to do to get in the right environment so that this can be nurtured and I can grow. It's as simple as that, and get the help that you all need. I love you all. Let me read some of these comments and I'm going to get on out of here really quickly. Sophie says, yes, delegate. Caribbean says, praise the Almighty Sovereign God. Debbie says, my goodness, you're in my detail. Thank you for this. You're welcome. You're welcome. You're welcome. I am getting ready to run out of here. You all, this week, I think today, and I think tomorrow, but I know it's today. I'm meeting with whoever is interested in joining the Unlocking Greatness community and getting into mentorship sessions and starting to go through the retreat with us. So we start up the retreat again. If anyone's interested or want to learn more, you all can join me. I'm going to be jumping on a quick Zoom. So I've got to run, but my website is unlockinggreatness.com. And I think we have the link on there if anyone wants to jump on a Zoom with me. I'm having a Zoom for about 12 minutes. There's going to be a few people in there that have a few questions. So if you have some questions, just if you have some questions, or maybe you need a little clarity on something, I'm going to set aside about 10, 12, maybe 15 minutes, hopefully max, to talk to a few of you all. So you can go to unlockinggreatness.com and join me on the Zoom. And I love you all. I've got to go because I'm getting ready to start the meeting. We'll be sending you a small message in your DM. All righty. I don't really be checking the DMs often, but I'll make sure I check it this time. Otherwise, I'll see you on the Zoom call. I'm getting ready to go now. If you go to unlockinggreatness.com, you can join me on my Zoom if you want to start joining the mentorship sessions. I love you all. I pray you've been encouraged. I've got to run. Love you all. Bye-bye. Love you all. I've got to run. Step into leadership. Do what God has called you to do. And I love you all. And for those of you all who are looking to get some extra help, and you want to at least learn a little bit more about the Unlocking Greatness community and see what it's all about, I'll join you on this Zoom in just a minute. Just go to unlockinggreatness.com. I love you all. I've got to go.